Road America, carved through the glacially sculpted moraines of Wisconsin's Kettle Moraine Forest, is globally renowned as a track of massive speed and consequence and of great history and respect. It is a driver's track above all, and thus a favorite stop for all. And today it welcomes the drivers and machines of the GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, for the 8th round of the championship, joined by the GT Sports Club competitors for their 6th round. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Creamer, joined by Calvin Fish, Ryan Marine down in the pits and on the grid. And Cal, this is one of those tracks that once you drive it, it's a favorite.
It really is, Greg. I came here for the first time back in the mid-'80s, immediately fell in love with it. It really reminded me of some of the classic European circuits like the Nürburgring, Spa-Francorchamps. There are no throwaway turns here around the 4+ miles. Everyone presents its own unique challenge, very much old school, high speed. You make a mistake here, could have big consequences.
And why is it so special? Well, you're about to find out with our Porsche track preview and a high-speed onboard ride by one of the sport's rising stars.
Hello, this is Maxwell Root, and we are at Road America. This is your Porsche track preview. We're approaching turn 1 here, 6th gear. We're looking for the access road, braking right after that. Down to 3rd gear, focusing on rolling the speed, opening our hands, and using all of the road on the way out. This is an important turn, setting up for turn 3. We're braking right at the 150 board, down to 2nd gear, opening our hands and really maximizing the exit here, as it's one of the most important straightaways of the track. As we're going under the bridge, it's a good place to look for your competitors behind you if you're racing, or to take a drink and prepare for the next laps ahead. We're going to be looking for the 2 board and to turn 5, down to 2nd gear, slowing the rotation and opening our hands as we drive up the hill to the bridge. We're going to be braking right under the bridge, down to 2nd gear, and opening our hands to set up for a fast sweeper in turn 7. Small breather on the throttle, but back in it quick. All the access road here on the way out. Turn 8's important. We're going to go down to 2nd gear, braking at the 2 board, and really setting up for a successful carousel. We're going to swing the car to the left, drive it in deep, and then balancing it on the front and rear axle as we're looking for all the grip in the track. Opening our hands and feeding in the power as we shift up to 5th gear and look towards the kink. We're going to be just taking a small breather at that 100 board, but staying the throttle committed on the back straightaway here. Up to 6th gear, really setting up for a successful Canada corner. It's a difficult part of the track. 3 board down to 2nd gear, opening our hands for a successful rotation and out of the corner. As we approach Billy Mitchell, small breather here, just like the kink. All the access road on the way out, and 14, one of the most important corners. Be slow on the way in and mega exit to set up for a successful straightaway. Thank you.
4 miles in just over a couple of minutes in these machines. That is remarkable.
It's quite the ride, Greg. It's got a lot of challenges there, and Max Root, he's been sensational this year. He's looking for another class victory here this afternoon with his teammate Fred Poordad.
And, of course, this is a doubleheader weekend. In the 7th round of the championship, an incident at the start, Cal, changed the complexion of the race right away.
Yeah, look at the 2 teammates here. You see David Askew going to the outside of George Cox. There's a little bump there, and ultimately takes out both cars. Big impact at the rear end of this 04 machine. They did get it out of the gravel eventually, but a couple of laps down. Here's another look at it. Just too many squeezed into the same space at the same time. Was not going to work on relatively cold Pirelli P0s.
Yeah, 3 into 1. Then here out front, you can see Racer's Edge having a good go. Indy Dontje in the Windward racing car had a great qualifying run, but Shelby Blackstock in that Acura was able to get to the front. Martin Fuentes slotted into 3rd, and then it was Fred Poordad in 4th. And in the race as well was the GT Sports Club America battle, and Ryan Gates was flying and had a great run, but Issa was charging, and he came up through and first got the 57 to Stu Frederick to run wide, and then Frederick spun on his own a little later. Ryan Gates continuing a remarkable run, and then this off late in the going by Russell Ward.
Yeah, that made it really close for the run to the finish, but no one can stop this man. Trent Hidman, 7th victory of the year in the silver class for he and Shelby Blackstock.
Yeah, that Racer's Edge team and that Acura Accelerated Services machine just hooked up and flying right now. And this field about to set sail and fly as well around Road America here as we close in on the start of this championship round. So as you can see, the 4 cars there at the back of the queue, those are our GT Sports Club competitors. And I think we have to acknowledge the fact that obviously both fields are fairly small here. Directly related in this category, GT3, it's a tremendous level of international competitors that are involved. And with the COVID pandemic and the travel restrictions, it's just really taken a toll on the people and the ability literally to come and be able to enter these races. But the teams that have showed up can't be thankful enough for that. They have put in a supreme effort to do so. And once again, you have to talk a little bit about the protocols that were put in place globally by SRO and the partnership with the promoters and the teams to follow them to a T so we could go racing. And part of it is the Global GT World Challenge powered by AWS World Challenge. That's the Manufacturers Championship. Ferrari, one of the manufacturers that play in it. Mercedes, also one of the key manufacturers, and in fact the defending champion. And Lamborghini recently announced as the 3rd manufacturer for this global championship. And what it is World Challenge America, World Challenge Europe, World Challenge Asia. These cars run, they accrue points across all of the divisions globally. Currently Mercedes out front.
They do have a good lead right there, but you can see Ferrari's not that far behind, and they got a very strong horse in the race here today.
As a matter of fact, the #1 Hublot Ferrari from Squadra Corsa at Sonoma, when they got that overall win there in the first of the 2 races, it was the 488 GT3's 300th win in global competition, and they got another one for him in yesterday's race, so they're definitely on the roll. But tell you, Cal, we take a look at the largest class, which is the Pro-Am class. I think I feel a shift in the force.
Yeah, I think so too. We've had 4 different winners in the Pro-Am division this year from the 7 races, but we have not yet seen this number 63 DXDT Racing Mercedes AMG at the front of the pack, and that's really frustrated Ryan Dial and David Escu. So what did they do? They put a brand new 2020 Evo Mercedes underneath them for this weekend. They did a bit of testing here recently, and it's proved that they have really now got a fine-tuned machine there as Ryan Dial put the car on the pole here for race 2 here this weekend.
They were a little bit frustrated because the team car just seemed to have the pace, and they have solved that issue, and the car is virtually identical. Here's a look at our GT Sports Club field. There's the Nobu Hotel Issa Law Firm entry of Mark Issa, and then here is Ryan Gates, who has just been unstoppable in the overall GT2 division. That Ferrari's a GT3 car. And then here is the #2 GMG Racing Porsche of Jason Bell, and alongside the Iron competitor, we'll explain that in a moment, in the hands of Stu Frederick, ready to go. As the Acura NSX safety vehicle has its lights on, it's the official safety vehicle of this championship. Let's get down and hear from the 3rd member of our broadcast team. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Greg. Good afternoon, Calvin. And as you saw in the highlights already, the winner in race 1 yesterday was the Racer's Edge Acura NSX. Shelby Blackstock, who started the race yesterday, he'll go 2nd today. Trent Hidman in the car already. And with the 1 victory under your belt, you might think, well, we'll leave the car alone, but that's not the case for this Racer's Edge team. You've been tweaking on it, and you're going to find out while we do if those changes work, right?
Exactly. I mean, through the year, me and Trent worked really, really hard with this Racer's Edge team, constantly improving this NSX GT3 Evo, and it's always a learning curve. I mean, it's my first year with the car. Trent's trying to grow his understanding of the car also with multiple years under his belt, so it's never-ending. It's a never-ending learning experience.
One of the keys to the race yesterday was the start that you got. Trent told me he was going to go to school and learn just how you did that. Similar situation for him. So what is the secret? How do you make that outside of the front row work for you?
The good news is that both the first and second corner is really good, fast right-handers, so you can really challenge on the outside, and if you're really stuck on the inside, you have to really give in. So it's very important to be in front and take the lead and kind of control the pace of the race. So it was just a really, really big part of the race to get ahead, be able to set the pace, and we were able to go from there.
Thank you for the time. Good luck
today.
Thank
you, guys.
Yeah, it was a remarkable start by Shelby, and of course these cars very aero sensitive, so having that clean air in the nose just keeps the balance alive in these cars a little longer, and boy did he make good use of that opportunity. And of course, this really is the first time this year that they've had actual competition within the class. We've got a second silver car here. It's proven to be pretty quick.
Yeah, really quick. Winward Racing running the previous generation of the Mercedes-AMG GT3 platform, so it's got a little bit more straightaway speed, doesn't have the downforce that the new Evo kit provides. So be curious to see what Russell Ward can do. He had a really strong run here despite the little off late in the going yesterday. He'll line up 6th here today, but he's not far off the pace, so expect him to make some moves. And Indy Dontje, he's got a tremendous amount of credentials behind his name, so when he jumps aboard this car at the halfway point, certainly should be able to make some things happen.
And the field making its way out onto the track to start their lone pace lap or formation lap before we go racing here. And at the back you see the 4 cars in GT Sports Club. And of course, that's going to be the format we've seen so far when they've raced with us here. Normally we would be pitting with the mandatory window between 40 and 50 minutes into the race. Because these guys race for 40 minutes, they push that pit stop window back by 5, so they'll checker the GT Sports Club cars, and then 5 minutes later the pit window will open for the GT3 stops.
Yeah, I think it just really erases any potential overlap between the checkered flag and those cars coming back to pit lane at a lower rate of knots and everyone else rushing back to pit lane for the pit stop window opening. And the minimum stop time for this race today is 86 seconds. That's the minimum amount of time you must spend on pit lane to get the 4 tire change done, the driver change, and top up with fuel.
And giving him that little bit of extra time, and you think, boy, that's a long time. But remember, just pit in to your stall here is a very long, slow trundle, isn't it?
It really is. It costs you a lot of time just traversing down pit lane at 50 kilometers an hour, which is the maximum speed limit. And you certainly don't want any penalties or extra drive-throughs for any reason, so we got to keep it clean here, and that's tough to do. It's a racetrack that you really have to commit to. You're going to use a lot of those exit curbings to try and maximize the radius through the corners, but if you run a little bit too wide, you can go for a rough ride as well and maybe damage the aerodynamics, which is so essential on these GT3 cars.
Yeah, they are sensitive, and as we're watching them follow the machine around out front, that Acura NSX, that beautiful carbon black DXDT Usalco Mercedes, again, the new Evo package complete on that car, not a kit, but the actual chassis, a ground-up build. And Ryan Dial was up on the wheel in qualifying.
Yeah, it's just giving him that little edge. I mean, when you're within a team with a guy like Colin Brown, and Colin seems to be consistently have that little edge on you, I think that frustrated Ryan, even though he's had a few fast laps this year, and he felt that something was amiss, and they had the resources to go and get a brand new car.
Yeah, they're just coming out of the carousel, heading toward the legendary kink on this pace lap, looking to go green soon. Lights are out on the Acura NSX, the official safety vehicle of the GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Looking forward to going green. Take a look at the starting lineup as we're showing it to you here. And keep in mind, 90-minute race, pit stop, driver change, new tires, fuel top-up. Busy time for that 86-second stop. And we're getting ready to go. There's a look at the starting lineup in the GT Sports Club. This is their 6th round, their first season of racing in America. It's been very popular in Europe and introduced this season. We are getting ready to go here for 90 minutes here in this 8th round of the championship. And Shelby Blackstock, he knows you can make something happen from that outside front row spot. Yeah,
he does, and his teammate is going to certainly try and make that stick here, as it will be Trent Hinman starting today in the 93 Racers Edge Motorsports car, and Ryan Dial. First pole position of the year, brand new car, hoping to make things happen here today and become the 5th different winner in the Pro-Am category.
I'm sure Shelby was telling Trent, you can do it. You can make this work here. So we're about to find out as the field makes its way out of the final turn, 14, a very steep climb up this long front straight to the start stand. And everybody there and ready to go. And keep in mind that white Porsche, left of the screen, 4th down, Ryan Gates, that's a couple hundred horsepower, almost more than some of these cars. Watch for what he's going to do here, but watch for this front row as we're about to go racing. There it goes, and Hinman looked like he actually got the drop, and he's already clear, and here comes Max Root.
Yeah, Max Root in that white and blue Porsche there, screen right as we look at them head down towards turn 1. You know, Dial's going to try and get back in there, but he's just too far back. He was waiting to get the jump, and Hinman just went. Big squeeze there between Colin Brown and Rodrigo Baptista through turn 1.
And look at the move by Russell Ward from the back of the field up into 4th, clearing both Colin Brown and Rodrigo Baptista. What a start by that Windward Mercedes. Oh, and a real aggressive move there. Colin Brown couldn't quite do anything with it.
He couldn't, and Russell Waters running the previous generation Mercedes AMG platform, so should have a little bit more straightaway speed. Doesn't have the downforce of the other cars that he's racing against. Colin Brown deep on the brakes to the outside. Sweeps to the outside. Can he make it stick around? He does.
He does. He just, enough of a pinch on Russell Ward's exit that he had to lose some momentum, and through goes Colin Brown, up now into 4th overall, then Ward, then Baptista, and then our GT Sports Club field. But what a start as well by Max Root.
Yeah, he even had to poke up the inside into turn 6 on our leader right there. Because of that, he's lost a little bit of ground. DL now trying to recover from that pole position, and you can just see Trent Hinman sprinting away at the front of this field.
Again, this car, this Wright Porsche, runs in the AM category, so it is not a class position issue with the 2 DXDT cars running behind. But as you pointed out, both Ryan and Colin would sure like to hear Max to go after that car, again in a different class, but overalls are all part of it.
Well, that's all important, and there's a big question mark hanging over the 2 DXDT machines because they got involved in that incident yesterday. No warm-up here today, so the team will certainly feel they got everything fixed correctly, but we'll have to wait and see what their pace is like here today as the 2 leaders are sprinting away from them a little bit.
Yeah, and Colin Brown looks like he might be a little bit quicker than Dial right now. He's really pushing him awfully hard. Ooh, Baptista may be taking a look at Ward down into turn 14. It doesn't work well often because it makes you slow up the hill, and he thought better of it, and up the hill they climb. And you can see now where these GT3 cars, even though they don't have the horsepower of those GT Sports Club cars, it's what they do in the corners, and that big margin now is developed back to Ryan Gates.
Baptista looking down to the inside in the Hublot Ferrari. They've had 3 victories on this season with he and Martin Fuentes. They're the championship leaders right now by a 9-point margin over the 0-4 car of Colin Brown and George Kurtz, that CrowdStrike entry there that flies through turn 3.
Right now, Baptista would surely like to be a little bit closer to those 2 DXDT Mercedes, particularly the one nearest him. That is that 0-4 car that they're having that great championship battle with. Then Dial, he and David Askew a little bit farther back in the points table, so this is their shot to make some ground up here, clearly.
Russell Ward doing a really nice job here, keeping that margin pretty tight there with the 2 Mercedes up in front there. The newer generation got the 2020 Evo cars that the DXT team are running. But Russell Ward has been very impressive here this weekend, and he's in amongst the big boys. I mean, this is the higher graded drivers that are running here in this first stint here today. He's part of a silver-silver combination, so you can make the choice between he and Indy Dontje for who will start this race for Winward Racing.
And you can just take a look at the front end and the rear bodywork structure of the Mercedes here and see the differences in that new car that's just flashing away in the previous gen model. Then Baptista, look back here, Ryan Gates, boy, did he get to jump at the start on Mark Issa. And Issa had the pole, but Gates used that big power advantage since he's running the GT2 Porsche versus Issa, the GT3 Ferrari. And he's opened up a pretty sizable lead already. In fact, Stu Frederick has jumped from 4th on the grid to 2nd overall, leading in the iron category in his GMG Racing Porsche.
Yeah, certainly Gates has been phenomenal this year, unbeaten so far on those GT2 machines, running in the Sports Club Racing category. About 150 more horsepower in the GT3 cars, but not the downforce. So you'd think on a course like this with big long straightaways, they'd be quicker. They are not. That really puts a premium on the braking ability and the cornering ability and the balance of the race car to get lap time here. We see Mark Issa coming off that GT3 overall win here yesterday, starting to put the pressure back on Stu Frederick.
Yeah, and he's able to run some serious speed through the corners here, gets to the straights, he's a little off. Mark, I thought, exercised great discipline yesterday when he got to the back of these GT2 cars, understanding that he wasn't going to be able to do anything with them in the straights, and he just stayed close, worked them over, found the opportunity. But I thought it was a very disciplined drive by Mark.
Well, it's a real chess game, and you got 3 very different sectors to this race circuit. The first sector, the last sector, more about speed. Yes, some very demanding corners in amongst those as well, but the middle sector, when you get down towards the brake zone for turn 5, all the way to the exit of the King, that's where this GT3 Ferrari should have its edge, and that's what he had to do yesterday, Greg. Just be very close here down into turn 5 and really leverage all of the pace and speed that he has through that twisty section to make his move.
It's almost as if he needs to make the move into turn number 8 and then use that pace through the carousel, through the kink, to build a little bit of a margin here. And Stu Frederick, a couple of moments in yesterday's race, and I'm sure he'd like to have one that's a little less fraught today.
And there you can see the Ferrari really closes in on the GT2 Porsche here through this sector. Trying to make something stick through here. Long, demanding right-hand sweep here called the carousel. Just keeps coming at you. The road falls away a little bit off camber. Right as you want the car to load up and give you the grip, the racetrack has taken it away from you as you have to commit to the throttle. Big exit speed there. High-speed kink coming up. About 130 miles an hour, 140 miles an hour right through there. And then these GT2 Porsches will reach speeds about 175 miles an hour. Probably about 12 to 15 miles an hour quicker than the GT3 cars in the field.
And you can see right there, Frederick, once he got through the kink where that Ferrari closed up, he's able to go. And the one thing, the downforce on these GT3 cars where it also makes a huge difference is braking. And you can see how much later Issa can go on the brakes and thus close up on the back of Frederick.
Yeah, big time. And the frustration factor kicks in right here. He's right there with him. And they'll just watch him disappear up this front straightaway.
See, he gets out of the turn with a great run and then just watches the tail of that Porsche get a little bit smaller. And there is Trent Hinman, and he has opened it up now over Max Root. Just turned fast lap of the race at a 207.489. Max not that far off at a 207.9, but enough that margin's up over a second and a half back to from Hinman to Root right now.
There's the Dutch driver, Indy Dontje, 27 years old. He's had a strong connection with the Mercedes AMG factory team for a number of years now. And Winwood Racing have joined forces with HTP Racing over in Germany. And before the pandemic kicked in, they expected to do 50 to 60 races globally. Obviously, that's been shortened a little bit with the lockdown, but nonetheless, still a very busy season ahead of them.
They're going to get as much out of it as they possibly can. Watching Max Root leading in the AM category, running second overall in the Wright Motorsports Porsche. And as we have said, a rising star in GT racing. Absolutely no question about that. Today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with Acura, with Bentley Motorsport, and with Ferrari. Look at this, Rodrigo Baptista now starting to amp up the pressure a little bit on Russell Ward. And Baptista, of course, has run here before with a different manufacturer, one he's racing for in Europe in the Bentley team. But this Ferrari has had a pretty good history at this track. The general consensus is there are other cars that might be better in certain spots, but the Ferrari over a lap is just really consistent. At least it has been.
It certainly has, but when you're looking at the car's behavior over some of the bumps here, particularly that approach into turn 14, you can see it really bucking around a little bit more than some of the other platforms. So I'm not sure if that's something they've just missed with the setup or that's just prevalent with that chassis itself. But nonetheless, I mean, you know Baptista is one of the fastest young drivers in the sports car paddock at the moment. To see him as the championship leader running at the tail end of this lead pack is not what he expected coming into this weekend.
Absolutely not. And he certainly would like to get through on Russell and then see if in clean air, if he's got a little bit more speed and can try and close it up to the DL Braun Team DXDT battle, running third and fourth overall right now. Look to the inside, but Russell doing a nice job deep on the brakes into 5.
Yeah, and Russell Ward is a really nice young man, 27 years old. His father also races on occasion as well. And they just love their racing, have a lot of passion, done a lot of events, and it's really brought Russell Ward up the learning curve very, very quickly. I mean, he's able to now duke it out with some of the more experienced drivers in the sports car paddocks these days to great effect, and you can see him here holding off Baptista.
He certainly had some great co-drivers this year, but I think having basically a guy who's Mercedes, almost Mercedes factory related, with Indy's speed and reputation to compare notes with, so maybe a big opportunity for Russell to just step it up another notch.
Yeah, and he's had a lot of laps here at Road America. It's Indy's first time here, so a lot to learn at this race circuit. 4 miles in length, 14 very demanding corners, and some of them very tricky to learn, like the long carousel turn, for example.
Russell just taking a mildly defensive posture into turn 12, known as Canada Corner. just in case Rodrigo was thinking of doing anything here. And up through the Billy Mitchell turn. No bridge anymore, but it's still a pretty fascinating corner.
It is kind of blind on the entry. It's a little bit easier to get your sight line through that corner with the bridge abutment no longer there, of course.
And then through 14 in this climb up the hill. And Mercedes just looks like it's got a little bit more top end as they whistle down this long, long straight, going past pit out and heading down into turn 1. And Baptista not close enough to try and do anything. He has to look for another opportunity. Russell Ward continuing to hang on here in that 5th overall spot with a fairly persistent Rodrigo Baptista right on his 6th right now, running in 6th spot. And Baptista, he's seeing those 2 DXDT Mercedes up in front of Russell Ward. Seeing they're getting away, he looks again down to the inside, but Russell has been really good on the brakes into this very tricky corner.
Yeah, he's just keeping it really neat and tidy. He hasn't really made a mistake yet or opened up the door for Rodrigo to take advantage of it, so that's what he needs to keep doing. And this is all part of the learning curve. We saw him yesterday lose focus a little bit, it seemed like, and had that slight off, even though there might have been a technical issue that related to that moment. We saw him debriefing with some of the other drivers after the checkered flag yesterday, kind of using his hands to describe what was going on with his race car. But meanwhile, up front, Trent Hinman scorching away from this field. The gap now nearly 3 seconds on young Max Root. And he has the fastest lap of the race so far at a 2:07.48.
Max still running 2:07.8 for his best. A couple of 2:07.7s from Dial and Brown. But you have to continue to be mightily impressed with Max Root.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about this young man. He's been doing testing with Porsche in the early part of this season before the lockdown. And then, you know, with his age and lack of experience at this level, you're just waiting for the young man to make a mistake. But there's been no chink in his armor so far. He seems very comfortable running with the big boys. And I think that performance that he put in at Sonoma, where he really pretty much trailed Jerome Bleekemolen and recognized as one of the best GT pilots globally and certainly a very strong Porsche contender, he followed him and kept in his wheel tracks for the whole stint at Sonoma, and that's really making a statement.
Yeah, that was a great performance, no question. Let's get down to the pits, check in with Ryan.
Well, this has been a big step in the career of Max Root to jump full-time into GT3 racing. He'd done a little bit of it before, but to get the help from Fred Poordad to make that step. And talking to Fred yesterday after the race, he said part of the goal for this program was to get Max on the radar and help him take the next step in his career. And a big announcement came in that he would be taking part in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And that brought into question just what this program would look like at the SRO America round at Circuit of the Americas, which happens to be on the same weekend. So Max obviously will not be available. But speaking to Fred, the plan is for Wright to be there in some capacity. Who his co-driver is going to be, we don't know at this time. But the good news is we will see Fred continuing with this program. We will see Wright. And then he said we look forward to welcoming Max back to the program when we get to the season finale at Indianapolis. But to say the least, this has been a very successful foray into GT3 racing all across the board for both Fred, who's also quite new to GT3 racing, and Max Root as well.
And Fred, when he talks about Max, he almost sounds like a proud papa. And you understand that. He just had a big moment there by Ryan Dial coming out of turn 7, dropped both of the lefts, had a big moment, was able to gather it up, and didn't lose much. Watch it here. This is a tricky corner.
It just gets wide there, and actually if you try and bring it in a little bit sooner, there's even a bigger and deeper pothole that you can run into. We saw that earlier today in some of the other classes racing here, so by just keeping it as wide as he did, actually is a bit smoother run off that corner. Obviously you don't want to be out in the grass at all here, but we talk about this racetrack, big consequences if you make a mistake at some of the speeds you're achieving through some of these high speed sectors.
Well, some of that consequence comes obviously if you have a big off and big impact, but the other part of it is you get too aggressive on these curves or you run wide, bounce badly with the aero, the diffusers and splitters on these cars, they run them so low, you can damage those and then your race is hugely compromised.
Yeah, big time, and both of these cars were compromised yesterday with the incident between their teammates heading right up here into turn 1 at the start, so they're very aero sensitive. And I think they were surprised actually that the pace they could run with that damage, but this battle is not going away. Russell Ward still holding down that 5th position overall, 2nd in the silver class, being chased by our Pro-Am Championship leader, Rodrigo Baptista.
Yeah, just real impressed with what we're seeing from Russell here. And Rodrigo has to continue to be a little bit frustrated here in that Hublot Ferrari. And a couple of other sponsors have appeared on that car, Ferrari of Fort Lauderdale and also the Concours Club. And it is the newest of the motorsport resort sort of concept, but they've taken it to another level. They're building it on a parcel right adjacent almost to the Miami International Airport. And some of the people with that program have said the whole idea there is you can have your team and everything, your car all based there, but with the airport there, you fly in, you go right next door, you spend the day driving, and then you can get back on a plane, go back, and go to work. And they're looking forward to that being completed in the near future.
Yeah, and obviously with the weather that you get there year-round, I'm sure it'll be a busy place come the off-season, and maybe a good testing opportunity for some teams as well, looking for confirmed good weather.
Taking a look here, watching Russell up front. Hinman has stretched it to almost 4 seconds. And he's doing it in small increments, but he's doing it consistently. Then Dial Brown, 3rd and 4th. And then here's Russell Ward, here's Baptista. The kink. Wow, what a commitment corner that is.
Beautiful sector of the racetrack, just great rhythm to this. With the GT3 cars, they got the downforce to come through there at high speed and get all the way back over to the left-hand side of the road to set up for your braking point. Pretty bumpy there on the exit. You got to be careful with what Baptista was doing right there as he's trying to maximize that radius and gain a little bit of exit speed.
Running through the section track here they call Thunder Valley. And then starting to run back up the hill. There is Max Root, 2nd overall, leading an AM. And doing a nice job. I mean, look at the caliber of drivers he's staying ahead of here. He's not quite as quick as they are at this moment.
Yeah, and unfortunately for him, Hinman continues to increase his pace. He just laid down a new fastest lap at 207.46 and gained about a second on the chasing pack behind him.
In that lap, Root turned to 208.4, but Dial at 208.1, Brown at 208.2.
Ward and Baptista just set their personal best as well at 208.8. You got like 3 kind of classes in terms of speed right now. You got Hinman kind of out by himself, then you got Root, Dial Brown, and then Ward and Baptista in that 3rd group. There's Colin Brown's dad, Jeff Brown, screen left, the gray hair and the mask on. Working the data, one of the most talented and savvy race engineers you'll find. They've just developed a great chemistry over the years, obviously, with Jeff being every part of Colin's racing world, starting in go-karts and on up.
Well, the more complex and intricate these cars become, more important becomes that engineering factor, doesn't it, on dialing things in. And just minuscule changes in this level of racing program in a car can have big effects. And, you know, if you go the right way, it's massive. If you go the wrong way, it's massive.
And he's just got such great chemistry, you know, worked with Colin for so long, all of Colin's racing life. I mean, he just understands the language and the terms that Colin would use in terms of how bad a problem is, how good the car is, and know the subtleties of all of that. And you just need that, you know, with the competition level, the way it is, you can't just jump in one of these cars and drive it to victory. You got to work with the race car and make it better every single session.
And Max Root continuing to hang on, but Dial closing in just a little bit here. There he is. He's got a little bit of a margin now back to Colin Brown. So while it's not a battle for class position, the overall 2nd place is now starting to come under perhaps fairly intense contest here at Road America as this trio heads down into turn 1, holding station at this point. Turn 3 and continuing on. Max, nice job through turn 3 that time. Looked like he actually opened it up just a little bit.
Yeah, and all these corners are super important. I mean, they're long duration corners, and you know, you just need the balance. You need the car to maintain that nice poise through the corner, be able to open up your hands early. If you've got any understeer, it's going to make you late to power, and then that affects you all the way down that big long run down to turn 5.
This very tricky corner there, turn 7. Once you turn into that corner, as it falls away down that hill, it's just completely off camber. You get no help from anything there.
Yeah, I've always found that one of the most difficult corners here because the car never really takes a set. You get to the mid part of the corner by apex, then the road has fallen away from you. You've still got a little bit of load in the car, so if you overcommit to it, you'll have a ride like Ryan Dial did have a couple of laps ago.
It's exhilarating when you get it right, though, that's for sure.
To piece together a whole lap here is something else. And just give you tremendous satisfaction. It's 14 corners over 4 miles, so it makes it more tricky. But we talked about the fact yesterday, Greg, that if you just get that percentage of grip up in all 14 corners, it just relates to a huge chunk of lap time. Even if you're just at like 1/10 of a second per corner, I'll give you 3/4 of a second, and you see these huge margins. We saw in qualifying here last year for Daniel Serra, who just got those Pirelli P0s to peak at the perfect time, nailed the lap, and was just miles ahead of the competition. But come race time, everyone was right there with him.
Yeah, well, with 14 turns, depending upon if you're a glasses half full or glasses half empty kind of person, it's 14 opportunities to find time, and it's 14 opportunities to lose time.
Works both ways. So with that setup, if you get it right, as you just said, it can be perfect, and if you're a little bit off, it's tough to drive around.
Hinman has lowered that fast lap to 2:07.462. And keep in mind, in this category, with the change of tire at the pit stop, you can push them a little bit more, a little bit deeper into your stint, can't you?
You certainly can, and the pit stop window, as you mentioned earlier in the show, between the 45 and 55-minute mark, and with them starting the stronger graded driver here, you'll expect this first stint to go more towards the long end of that 55 minutes rather than pitting early to keep your faster driver in. But obviously that has to be factored in with tire degradation and lighter fuel load, possibly for the second driver.
That's where those strategists on top of the pit box are, why they earn the big bucks, because they're looking at all of that. Looking at software, if we pit now, where do we come out, etc. All kinds of factors that they're checking into right now. Behind Brown, Ward has faded a little bit back by about 7 seconds, and then still has Baptista glued to him. Trent Inman's drawing away out front up to over 6 seconds now over young Max Root. I'll tell you, this guy, you know, we've followed his racing for a long time. We watched when he looked like he was an up-and-comer in the BMW program, and they let him go. He was sort of in the wilderness for a while. But when he got the opportunity with Acura, and especially with this NSX, it's like he fits it like a glove.
Well, he's a smart young man, and he's just matured now and got that confidence level going. Won a GT3 championship last year alongside Mario Farnbacher, so that was a great sounding board for him as well to learn the last few points of performance. And whenever he jumps on board now, he just looks so comfortable and confident and dominant right now. We saw it yesterday at the end of the race and just took off here and leaving the rest of the competition in his dust, literally.
And currently has that CrowdStrike fastest lap, that 2:07.462 for Trent Hinman in the Acura Accelerated Services Racer's Edge.
That was a little bobble there. He had to catch that. That probably cost him. Curious to see how that first sector is on this lap. It looked like he had a little moment there on entry. He had to give it up, catch the race car, so he's still pushing hard, but maybe tires are starting to give up a little bit. But the Acura is certainly well suited to this race circuit, as we saw last year with real-time racing, Garb, and a couple of victories in the Pro-Am class, as well as an overall, which celebrated real-time racing and P.D. Cunningham's 100th World Challenge victory for Dane Cameron and Mike Hedlund.
One of the things for the Acura is, you know, visually you can tell it's just a little bit slipperier than some of the other cars. And when you've got 3 very long high-speed sections, if it's slipperier but makes decent downforce and doesn't just have as much body drag, it's going to be a strong, you know, proposition. And they were good last year, all the teams that ran it, but it just seems like it's even better this year, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And also a different Pirelli tire being used this year, so it's all about the compatibility of that with the manufacturer platform as well. It's really the tire that's doing the work at the end of the day. That's the only thing that's touching the road, or should be. Let's put it that way. I know obviously the cars bottom out now and again, but that's where the grip's coming from, the performance. And all of the teams and drivers seem to really give praise to this new Pirelli compound for this year in spec.
They said it may not be as fast even on just a single lap, you know, one of the flyer laps, but they said over the course of the stint, it's much more consistent, and you can be much quicker at the end of the stint than you could on the old tires. So they're all really, really enjoying it. They said it's just a more consistent setup platform with this tire. But your point about the tires, it doesn't matter how good the car is. Every input, whether it's aero, whether it's throttle, brake, downforce, whatever, is all transmitted to the road through 4 remarkably small contact patches. And if that piece of rubber isn't working, you're in for a long day. Let's get down to the pits. Ryan Marine, an update on that Ferrari.
Let's keep the tire conversation going as well. I talked to the team briefly to see what Rodrigo Baptista was dealing with, and evidently their tire pressures have really skyrocketed, leaving him with a race car that doesn't handle very well. And I mentioned the fact that we had noticed the Ferrari bouncing a little bit more than the other cars out on track, and they believe that that bouncing actually has contributed to those high tire pressures. So definitely an issue that they're going to have to try and address during their pit stop before Martin Fuentes takes the wheel.
Thanks very much, Ryan. That's interesting. But how much can you do with anything other than adjusting tire pressures? And a pit stop like that, it's not like you can make massive setup changes, soften the platform up a little bit or whatever would stop that pogoing.
Yeah, you're pretty much stuck with a basic setup once the green flag falls, of course. So they're just going to have to hang on and try and do damage control here with the point situation. But certainly they can pressure the second set of tires a little bit differently for Martin Fuentes, who will take over the reins of this Hublot Ferrari. And that may factor in as to when they make their pit stop as well. If they really feel that Baptista is really not making any ground on the Winward Racing machine in front of him, they may elect to get Martin behind the wheel a little bit earlier than they anticipated.
And of course, keep in mind, they now started last year. They use tire warmers, and on a cool day like this, that'll have even more impact. So it's not like Martin will be coming out or any of the competitors out on an absolutely cold set of tires. So you can get those pressures a little, or temperatures a little bit better to where your preferred pressure rate is.
Yeah, and they call that the undercut by coming in early on fresh tires. And as you said, you don't have to warm them up. They're going to be up to near operating temperature immediately with the tire blankets and tire warmers. So that plays a bit more into the hands of the strategy these days over the last couple of years since they've been allowed. But here we see Ryan Gates continuing to lead in class. A little bit of tire squeal there as Mark Issa is really closing in on him here. And this is the sector where that Ferrari is really strong. About 11 minutes left in their event before they'll see the checkered flag this afternoon.
I think Ryan Gates is truly relishing the challenge. His time attack, the qualifying feels very natural to him, but I think he's really relishing the challenge of stringing laps together here. And Issa has been stringing them together very well. But for Ryan, he ran a little wide there, and that might, I wonder if he just let Issa go, so there's no point in this. I don't have his speed on the complete lap, and I'm running for my GT2 overall scenario here. And regardless of what happens, Ryan already has 2 wins on this weekend because he won on the track yesterday, and then in Victory Circle he won when his girlfriend became his fiance right there in Victory Circle. So that was a big weekend. Actually, it's a big couple of weekends here because I found out that one of Apex Productions' own top people working in the truck is getting married next weekend. So congratulations to Lauren Goldman. So it's all great stuff here. But Ryan Gates, it was seeing her say yes, and it was a pretty special moment for him, clearly. And he's loving running here at Road America.
Yeah, and great to see Mark Issa back. He had some injuries that he's recovering from earlier this season, so great to see him back behind the wheel. And he's certainly a very enthusiastic racer, loves his racing, and he was pumped up about grabbing the 2 pole positions here yesterday. And just really has had a really solid day here. 2019 Ferrari Challenge, champion with 6 victories. So he knows his way around a circuit in one of these machines.
Well, I think this is, very possibly for him, one of the perfect platforms to come back after some injuries and just, get a run here. This GT Sports Club, program, 40 minutes, single driver. And yes, it's a competition. Everybody wants to do well, but it's also just the thrill of driving around the track. Perhaps a little less pressure, and I think that was a real smart move for him to maybe get his competitive return done this way. And there you can see the margin that Trent Hinman continues to build here, and And Root hanging on, but again, you see Dial closing it up just a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like the two Mercedes are a little bit stronger than the Porsche here late in the run. Certainly Hinman is continuing to spread that gap, now up over 8 seconds. And that just takes the pressure off his crew and having to really dial in that minimum pit stop time, which is 86 seconds here today.
Out of turn 3 under, that has become iconic, this Sargento, we're real cheese people bridge, and then down into turn number 5 here at Road America. That fall away braking zone, tricky, fun to watch. Today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with Lamborghini, with Mercedes-AMG, and with Porsche. Fun to watch, and certainly turn 5 is a real popular location here in terms of the spectators, big grandstands, and you can line the fences. The nice thing is we've got some here this weekend. This is the first weekend since the championship has resumed racing after that 4-month sort of enforced break that we've had spectators at an event, and that's been a nice plus.
Yeah, and that's the one thing about returning to Road America each year. I fell in love with the place, as I said, back when I first came here back in 1985, but each time I return, the racetrack itself in terms of the configuration hasn't really changed, but the facility continues to get better and better with all of the fan-friendly platforms that are built around this circuit. There's a nice sort of access road that's now built on the inside of the run down here through Kettle Bottoms down into Canada Corner for easier access for all of the fans to use these great spectator viewing areas.
In a lot of ways, for spectators, Canada Corner was, unless you went all the way to the outside of the track and around, it was kind of one of the best kept secrets on the track. And that's opened up that inside, which just gives you a whole different perspective on what this great track is and what these drivers, as they come whistling through the kink, when you look at it from the inside of Canada Corner, watch that approach, it's just breathtaking. Yeah,
and just hearing the engine noise come down through those trees is something to behold. It really is a bucket list item for any motor racing fan. You've got to come to Road America if you haven't visited it yet, and you'll enjoy the experience, that is for sure.
First time I came here as an adult, I ended up flagging one of the Road America 500 when Davy Jones and the V12 Jag and that group was out there. And I was flagging back in that kink area, and I was just absolutely blown away. This place is something. And later got a chance to drive in some SEC and club racing, and that was bucket list, as you said. Doesn't matter what category of racing you're in, club racing, even lapping days. Get here, you want to be able to say, yeah, I've done some laps around here.
All of these drivers digging deep here, trying to find those valuable few tenths before this pit stop window opens here. So if there's anything left for these tires, they're going to try and use it up here over the next 15 minutes or so.
86 seconds, a lot of that is taken up by that trundle down pit lane here. It's so long on that entry that you should certainly be able to get everything you need to do done in that time frame, but just something simple like ending up sitting on a seatbelt or having a problem with a connection on one of the radios or drinks bottle or whatever, and that time can slip away in a hurry, and it can cost you huge on the track.
Yeah, it certainly can, and we saw a few teams leave a lot of time on the table yesterday.
Oh, and Hinman coming up through the back, catching some of the GT Sports Club traffic, turn 14. Hinman working through Jason Bell in the GMG Racing Porsche, continuing to have a good run. Third in the overall category right now. And running fourth in the actual overall race order, Jason Bell is in the GMG Porsche. Ooh, runs a little bit wide there.
7th of 8 races for Jason Bell this weekend.
Exactly.
He's been doing that on a consistent basis since we've had some makeup races, some triple header weekends for the GT4 competition here.
I was going to say, one of the nice things when you're running that many races on this track, you've got at least these two fairly straight, the front straight and back through here, where you can get a little rest, but with 600, almost 700 horsepower in those GT2 cars, that goes by in a hurry too, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. They certainly get from point A to point B in a hurry, but it is one of those circuits. It's very demanding, but physically probably not one of the toughest because of the long stretches where you have a chance to catch your breath and relax a little bit.
These guys have just been in lockstep here. Hinman's got that margin up now to almost 9 seconds. Well, that last lap, Preston Root matched him, but I'm sure Hinman at this stage might have eased off just a little bit, not taking any risk with a big lead like that.
Yeah, traffic here, though, can be a big factor. You could see young Max Root there just flashing his headlights, trying to get Jason Bell's attention here as they come through a really high-speed sector here. This is the carousel once again, sweeping through here. Where's he going to catch Jason? Can he clear him by the time they get to the kink?
Well, Jason recognized what was happening and really gentlemanly, they're dipping the brake, letting these cars come through. One, these are just GT3 cars, more downforce, faster through this section of track, and two, with pros on board essentially, and that was a smart move by him. But even so, I think Max had to, breathed it a little bit here, and because Dial is significantly closer than he was.
Yeah, he's really close, but it's going to be interesting to see how young Max Root deals with a bit more pressure from behind. But now you're into that aero wash effect where these GT3 cars are so reliant on the downforce that you get into that zone there about a second back, and suddenly it's just stealing a little bit that very important air to the front splitter and the front dive planes. And you can see with the Evo Mercedes, it's got that downforce, so it struggles a little bit compared to the older generation car or the previous generation Mercedes, and certainly that Porsche down this front stretch.
And what happens, just to explain to somebody who might be relatively new to this, when you get that aero wash, that bad air on the nose of one of these cars, you start to really chew up the front tires, don't you? Because it just induces an aero push, if you will.
Yeah, you're just not getting the air dam effect on the front of the car. So if you get a close look at the front end of these cars, they got that splitter right across the front trailing edge there. And that's just going to, as they get on the brakes, that's pushing the nose down. Then the dive planes like on the side of the fenders there, also just pushing down and giving you downforce and grip in the corners. And that air is just being stolen away by the car in front of you, so it's not as effective. And obviously, you're trying to get the car to turn. And if you've got an understeer imbalance already, you can really start to get some tire degradation if you continually try and run through that.
Temperature can obviously affect the aero effect as well. The cooler the air, the denser it is, which means the more effective it is, both in providing oxygen to the engine for power, but also in terms of creating aero. And when it's hot out, and especially if the track's hot, you get that heat radiating off the track, those splitters suddenly become less effective. I mean, it's amazing how intense the aero is, and Mark Issa has been making use of the aero on his GT3, TR3 racing, and beautiful Ferrari 488, the Nobu Hotels entry.
It's going to be close looking at the clock here. He may just get the checkered flag to end the 40-minute race here next time around. He's right on his lap time number, I believe, so we'll have to wait and see what this last lap is like. If he wants to control this race, maybe just ease off the pace a little bit, or if he's enjoying it, try and get back and beat it to the line before time runs out.
Well, this entire weekend on every upshift, when we see Issa tails away, there's that little puff of smoke from that right rear corner. They say it's just a little overflow thing of absolutely no concern, and it certainly isn't affecting his speed, as he has been able to, once he got around Gates, open up that margin just a little bit. But Ryan Gates in a 311 RS Motorsports machine really looking to continue essentially a perfect streak in his GT2 overall class here. He's won everything so far, and I think most poles and fast laps as well.
Well, he's been quick, but he's also up to speed really quick. He's had really good starts, typically jumps out to a commanding lead and then controls it from there. And seems to have a little bit of understeer that he has dialed into this race car, so I'm not sure if that's something that he's fighting on a continual basis or whether he just likes the car set up that way. When you're trying to put 700 horsepower to the ground, you don't want it to be tail happy, particularly here at Road America.
Yeah, I would think that would be a smart move. Watching him work his way through into Canada corner. Doing a really nice.
Look at the clock.
Yes. Well, this is going to be close, isn't it? He's out of the last turn. I think Checker might come out. Yep. There's the 40 minutes. See if he comes by, lights flashing. He knows. Gets the win today. Yesterday, won the GT3 class, finished second to Gates. Today, gets the overall win, and with a pretty nice margin as well, up over 7 seconds. And here is, again, Ryan Gates, second overall on the field today, but winning the GT2 overall category. The beautiful 311 RS Motorsports entry. And what for him has been a really, really special weekend. Nicely done for him. And then Stu Frederick should be coming through third with the overall order, winning the iron category in the 57 GMG Racing entry. And then Jason Bell completing the field with a third overall finish in the overall class on track in that GMG Racing Porsche. And Trent Hinman has eased his way clear to the tune of just over 10 seconds now. And we're within 4 minutes of the pit window opening for our GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS machines, here in this 6th round, or this 8th round of their championship, 6th round for GT Sports Club. So Hinman doing everything he can to prepare for that stop. Today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with AWS, with CrowdStrike, and with Optima Batteries. At Acura Accelerated Services, Racer's Edge machine just ticking the laps away here, doing a brilliant job. And Root, I'll tell you, he's doing a nice job keeping those two top-tier pro drivers behind him. They're close, but they haven't been able to figure out a way through yet.
No, they've kept the pressure on, but young Max Root hasn't cracked, so he's just going to try and bring it home here. And I've got a feeling he's going to try and stay out as well. I mean, he'll have a little bit more pace, even though Fred Poordad has been very impressive this year. The speed of young Max Root would mean that John Wright would like to try and maximize that and take it deep into that pit stop window. And you said will open now in 2.5 minutes or so. So not this go-around, but next go-around, it should be a pit stop window opening. But then they got 10 minutes to play with in terms of strategy as to when they pit.
In these Pro-Am pairings, you would certainly expect, as we've talked about before, the pros to probably stay out a bit longer, obviously. Maybe for Russell Ward, depending upon what the data is showing, he might duck in a little sooner, because Indy Dontje is, I think, certainly shown to be maybe a tick quicker here, and get him in the car and try and do the undercut a little bit.
Well, the other thing is you also have the advantage if you made that pit stop. If there should be a caution for any reason, suddenly you got that pit stop out of the way. That'll certainly hurt everyone else who is yet to pit, so you could cycle to the front. So I think you're spot on there. I would imagine that the Winwood Racing team will be looking to get Indy in the car pretty early.
And then the other question that we're kind of wondering about is, will Baptista pit early if they are dealing with that real problem? I mean, he's technically the pro in this Pro-Am pairing, but Fuentes is very quick, and if they've got a real imbalance in that car because of tire pressures, he might decide, oh, let's bring it in, let's get the tires right, and then let Martin do it whatever he can.
Well, you got to roll the dice a little bit, right? They're really not going anywhere throughout the course of this race. They're struggling for balance in the race car. Tires seem to be overpressured a little bit, and Baptista's just kind of stuck there in that 6th position overall. So why not get Martin in there and hope you catch a break?
Turn number 6. And here's that run through 7 that is so tricky. And we're 1 minute away from the window opening, so things getting interesting. Trent Hinman stretching the margin, and why not? We're within a minute of that pit window opening, and if he's got good tire on the car, he might as well set sail just a little bit and go after it here. But lots of strategies to be employed here as we get ready for this pit window. And I love this because this is a team sport. You know, the drivers get a lot of the attention, but the teams are the ones that put in those long hours and get everything going, and this is their opportunity to show what they're capable of under a bit of pressure. And generally they do an absolutely superb job, and it brings them into the equation a bit more for the race itself.
It certainly does, and looking at the times there, it's going to be too early for Hinman, even if he wanted to pit this lap, and probably just a sniff too early for these guys too. As you look at the clock there, they could maybe dive, but probably from their data, they're not absolutely certain they can make it and be within that window.
So Ward would maybe be the first guy to take the opportunity as the window is now open.
Ward and Baptista, you may see one of them dive. Max Root, when we see another 3 or 4 laps from him here today. Been very impressive, great start. Thought about making a move for the lead even.
Did.
And then just settled in nicely and has kept these Mercedes AMG machines at bay.
So far we haven't had any takers heading into the pits for that mandatory stop here.
And that surprises me. I really thought that Winward Racing would get Indy behind the wheel. I mean, I know that Russell's been very quick here this weekend, but getting some fresh tires on, everyone's pace seems like it's dropped off, maybe a second to a second and a half towards the end of this first stint here. So fresh rubber would really pay dividends now if you came in and took them.
And then the question, of course, for Baptista with that tire pressure issue he's been dealing with. Martinez, a very quick AM. And get the tires right and let him get out. Martinez had success at this track before, so we'll see if they opt to do it just a little bit early right now. I would think these three certainly will stay out just a little bit. And for Hinman, Shelby has proven to be awfully fast this year, so they can just play whatever strategy game they want, really, can't they?
Yeah, well, you're really going to be matched up against the starting drivers yesterday, and as we saw, Shelby did a great job and grabbed the lead early and extended it towards the first round of pit stops, so he should be up to the task for all of the other co-drivers who will be taken over. So they have the option for John Meraki and Racers Edge to make that call a little bit earlier if they want to. And again, it's unlikely. Well, it's been a pretty clean race so far that we'll see a caution, but if you should catch a caution, then you'd be in great shape strategy-wise.
We actually saw that in a way at one of the races earlier when the Racers Edge car got caught when a caution came out during the pit window, and it cost them dearly. Look at that, and there goes Russell. Baptista was thinking about it, getting a toe off him, and then realized he's going into the pits. Well, so here we go.
They may have given Baptista the message, do whatever he does. I mean, do the opposite to what he does. So if he doesn't come, you come in. If he comes in, stay out. And then it's hammer time for Baptista. He's got to lay down a really good lap here, even though the tires are well worn.
Watching here is Russell Ward heading toward that TechMet Winward Racing pit, where he will be turning that car over to Indy Dontje. As we watch Baptista now out in clean air, see if he's able to find anything in terms of a little bit of pace. Meanwhile, here comes Russell Ward, Ryan.
And Indy Dontje, the Dutchman, getting set to replace Russell Ward behind the wheel of this Mercedes AMG GT3. The older generation, not the Evo. Keep in mind that Indy was the pole sitter for race 1 of the weekend yesterday. Regarding the strategy here on pit lane, Martin Fuentes only recently just got suited up, so they were not planning on coming in early in this window. One benefit, though, is the car that they were stuck behind is this one, so they should have some clean air for that Ferrari following this pit stop. Speaking of the pit stop, very clean so far, coming around to make the change here on the right rear. Fuel disengaged, down off the jacks. The car is fired up and they send it. Maybe a slight delay, you tell me.
Well, we are watching it here.
Yeah, 2.5 seconds outside the minimum there, so not too bad.
Not too bad. And that's the key. If the car comes down off the jacks and leaves immediately, they're tight or maybe even in trouble. If it sits for a little bit, then they've done it well. These three continue and stay out as predicted here. And this is such a long lap, Cal. You've got to be paying real attention to the numbers in terms of lap times versus window open time. And if you get trapped out there, it can be very, very costly.
You don't want to cut it too close in case you have a problem technically or have a quick spin on that in lap. So I think these guys can safely do 2 more laps if they choose to do it before hitting pit lane, but nothing beyond that certainly.
There's a look at Baptista as he stays out one more time. One thing we haven't talked much about this track, and the issues are pretty much mitigated with the refueling that they do, but this track is known to be a big consumption track, on both fuel. You use a lot of fuel on this track because there's an immensely high percentage of this track where you're flat out, but also it takes a toll on brakes, doesn't it?
It does, but even with a 90-minute race, these guys should be in good shape brake-wise, I would have to imagine, unless they got some kind of brake cooling issue. But talking about Baptista, he just laid down his personal best third sector there, so it is definitely go time here in terms of them trying to do the overcut, which means you stay out longer, try and use these really hot tires, and the driver is very much in rhythm versus the driver who's just jumped on board. Admittedly, they have tire warmers, but they're not at the peak temperature, so it may take you 3 or 4 corners to get them up to speed.
Well, Rodrigo is awfully good, and if he's figured out a way to do a little drive around, as you said, and now in some clean air, can really go here, as Hinman has been doing from the absolute drop of the flag. Beautiful move around the outside of Dial into turn 1, and that was that.
And the other key factor is for the Squadra Corsa team that the Windward team with 2.4 seconds outside the minimum pit stop time. So if they can nail that a little bit closer, plus Baptista laying down good lap times, they may get ahead of the 33 Mercedes.
Yeah, that's a good point. And obviously, Hinman's staying out, but he's absolutely going to have to pit next time. I think next lap we're going to see everybody pit if we don't see anybody pit this one.
The tremendous performance by Trent. Really just had a really good setup. Jeff Brown brings his son Colin in 1 lap earlier than he absolutely had to, and it's going to be George Kurtz jumping on board. They currently run second in this championship chase, now 9 points behind after the drama here yesterday, and here comes Baptista also.
I wonder, bringing in Colin a lap early, they both run for DXDT Racing, and it may be that they didn't want to have both cars sitting there in the pits at the same time and give everybody room to work. And Rodrigo coming in about ready to hand over to Martin Fuentes. Ryan?
Right you are. That is the change that's going to be happening here shortly. Martin Fuentes waiting patiently to get behind the wheel of that car. The Ferrari coming in, he'll have to come around the CrowdStrike Mercedes to do so. It doesn't seem to impede his progress too much. Further up pit lane, indeed, as we really would anticipate, both Wright and Racer's Edge getting ready to go on their pit stops. Looking pretty clean so far for the TR3 bunch. A crucial pit stop here, as you highlighted. A chance perhaps to make that jump of position past the Windward team if they can do this smoothly. Colin Brown has been released. He heads down the pit lane, ready to rejoin the fight. And we'll have a flurry of action here shortly when the rest of the cars make their way to pit lane here next lap.
Watching that time, Colin Brown and George Kurtz just a little under, but they haven't used the Joker yet, so they should be okay, Cal.
Yeah, 85.7 seconds versus an 86 minimum, so you have that 1 second buffer to work with, just 1 time per weekend, as now Martin Fuentes is released. And this is not such a good stop. I think there's a bit of a delay on the right rear. It looked like they were struggling to get that right rear tire off, so it may have been a gun issue there. And that has cost them the possibility of leaping around the 33 car, unfortunately for them.
The way it looked, had that stop happened as fast as it should have, and we know that they can do, they would have been out in front of the
They
Mercedes.
would have been. Then obviously Martin would have been vulnerable because he wouldn't have the tires completely up to temp, and certainly Indy would have been into a rhythm.
So George Kurtz now out in the AWS CrowdStrike DXDT Mercedes, getting those tires up to the comfort zone for him after taking over from Colin Brown. Meanwhile, Hinman is in, Root is in, and Dial make their way into pit lane. Here comes Trent and hits his marks, Ryan.
That they do. Crucial pit stop here for these guys. A great lead that Trent Hinman had been able to build up over 10 seconds in that opening stint. Keep in mind, a pit lane miscue really proved costly at Sonoma. And speaking to both Trent and Shelby yesterday, having a nice, clean, trouble-free run throughout the day in race number 1, that was really cathartic for this team. They were ready to put that disappointment behind them. Looking really, really smooth so far. Little trouble disengaging the fuel probe, however, but because they're holding the car, I don't think it cost them. Already on the rev limiter, there goes Shelby Blackstock. In behind them still is the pit stop for Wright Motorsports. It looks like a bit of a delay getting Fred Poordad belted in. That might be costly, we shall see.
Well, and the way they go, The Acura stop about really solid, 86.7 seconds, so that was well played. And for Dial, a little longer than that, about a second and a half over, and here comes George Kurtz, and Askew right out in front of him, taking over for Ryan. This is going to be interesting.
You know, George has got a lap under his belt here, so he's going to be into a bit of a rhythm, as we now see Fred Poordad and David Askew getting up to speed. So certainly the 20 car and the 63 pit stop time were within a couple of tenths of a second of one another, but certainly a nice margin there by the 04 squad, who executed their pit stop about a second and a half quicker, and that's put George Kurtz right in position here. He's got to make it pounce, though. He's got to come and get after these guys really quick before they find their rhythm and get up to speed.
Yeah, Root to Poordad was really about a 1.3 seconds long. So everybody in that same similar window, as you said. And we'll see what's going to happen here, whether George has got a little bit more of that rhythm flowing here right now. But I'll tell you, Askew has gone up the pace pretty quickly here. And sticking with Poordad as they head down through turn 8. Everybody building speed back up again. And watching Poordad, we've seen him be very impressive this year. And he's doing it once again. Watching Poordad here, you know, the next round of the championship has been moved back to Circuit of the Americas, so for a second visit, you get the feeling that Fred might feel he's got a little unfinished business there, and as strong as these guys have been this year, they might attack COTA with a vengeance. Yeah,
it's really been the only blemish on the team's notebook this year was Fred having that off in qualifying and damaging the car quite severely, so probably knocked his confidence a little bit, but boy, has he responded and come back strong. David Askew really up to speed very quickly here, impressed here with this opening lap for David, coming off that moment yesterday at the start where he and his teammate George Kurtz, who now runs behind him, got together up here into the brake zone for the very fast approach to turn 1.
David is right there, hounding Poordad. Looked to the inside just a little bit, as he wasn't quite close enough.
Well, the nice thing is you can see the confidence. He's thinking about it. He's not just settling in and sitting back there and watching. He's trying to, oh, he gets wide. David is wide there on the approach to turn 3. That allows George a bit of a run on him. And the moment yesterday was not the first time those two team cars had come together, Greg. They had a moment at VIR earlier this season as well.
A couple of them there. The first one was in qualifying, but it wasn't any of their fault. Another competitor spun in front of them, and both of them trying to take evasive touch. But yeah, during the race, one of the races itself, aggressive move by one and a little contact, and so it's pretty clear that there aren't a lot of team orders there. It's a go race.
Yeah, but I'm sure the team dinners are a little bit interesting after a day like that, but I think they've got enough respect for one another. They know they're just fierce competitors and want to get the edge over one another. Just need to give each other a little bit more racing room and keep it clean.
Poordad is feeling some heat right now. Again, this is not for a class position. This is just overall. But when you're the lone car running in a class, it's the overall that you really are thinking about here. Askew got a nice run out of the carousel, but you don't really want to try anything. Oh, look at Kurtz closing.
Wow.
In the kink here.
Big run of speed there, and then pinched it a little bit coming off. You've got to be careful with that one. You can't make the cut that early when you're committed through a high-speed corner like that. But it's hard to attack these corners. I mean, these rear wings are pretty big, Greg. You don't really have the sight picture through the corner.
Well, that's a real good point, too, here. And then you get blind entrances like that one. Fred Poordad feeling some monster heat right now from that Black's DXDT Usalco Mercedes in the hands of David Askew. And, you know, we heard both Colin Brown and George Kurtz say this new Evo package on their car, much more drivable. They really liked it. Well, this black Mercedes had been an Evo kit installed on the chassis up until this weekend. This is a built from the ground up Evo car. And I think, you know, Ryan was singing his praises, but it looks to me like David Askew, he likes this one too.
Yeah, he's looking really feisty right now, really racy, and trying to find a way through the Fred Poordad Porsche without making contact. He's really committed through these high-speed sectors. This is where the downforce of that Mercedes really pays dividends. I think the Porsche may have a little bit more straightaway speed than the two Mercedes that are following. And look in the backdrop. There is Indy Dontje trying to come back at this group.
Yeah, he is looking at speeds here. He just set fast lap of the race, Cal, at 2:07.369. And the previous lap just turned in a 2:07.5. Everybody else out there right now is running 2:10s.
Oh, late move there by George. Peeks the nose down to the inside. That distracted David a little bit. He gets wide, and George gets the run and claims the position.
That was a nice get in your head and in your mirror and into your head move there by George.
Yeah, I think David was looking there and thought his teammate was going to come down to the inside, just missed his turn-in point and washed out a little bit wide, and George pounced.
Now we'll see what George can do with Fred Poordad. George looks fast, and he really floats speed through the kink.
He does. I'd like to see him maximize that radius, though, all the way out there. Got to be careful there. Now he looks to the inside, down into the brake zone. Got to be careful here. A little bit bumpy there on the approach. Very easy to just skip across and get into the other competitor.
Well, that's allowed David Askew to come right back, but there's a silver flash right there. That is Indy Dontje, who is chasing and coming after these guys by clumps of seconds here. He is flying.
This is what we anticipated as his first visit here to Road America. He's going to learn this racetrack very, very quickly. And this second day, this second race, he's looking really strong. And this is what I thought they should do, is get him on board with some fresh rubber and try and do that undercut. And he's certainly closed in on this group ahead of him. And has dropped Martin Fuentes as well.
He is, look at the speed. He is floating through turn one. He has run these guys down here, and the way that these guys are working each other over a little bit. There it is, officially. The CrowdStrike fastest lap currently goes to Indy Dontje at a 2:07.369.
And he's just got a lot more experience than the drivers he's now coming up against. And also with that previous generation Mercedes AMG, a little bit more straightaway speed as well. He looks to the inside. David doesn't want to give it to him, but he just forces his way through.
Yeah, you can see that car was twitching and everything, and now Indy has said, okay, I'll return the favor and blunt your run up into turn 6.
But I love how racy David is. I mean, this is really making a big statement here today. He's really starting to feel his oats a little bit in terms of, I'll go after you. It's not going to be easy pickings for you, even though you've got a lot more experience than me aboard one of these Mercedes.
Well, and in the construction, the concept of these GT3 cars is obviously, you know, there's a lot of gentleman driver, the bronze pro-am kind of pairing, and you need to have that opportunity for those guys to feel comfortable and fast in the car. And from what we're hearing, this new Mercedes Evo car, the one built from the ground up, that performance window, that comfort window for the gentleman driver is a little bit bigger, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's what they made the changes for, just to make it a little bit more drivable for the driver who does not have the experience of some of the pros, and it seems to be working really well. George Kurtz, though, now he's got the distraction of Indy trying to make a way through there as he's continuing to put the pressure on Fred. But Fred, again, super impressive here.
Yes,
just
he
doesn't
is.
seem to make mistakes. He feels comfortable in this position.
George has had a lot of success at this track when he won his AM championship in GT4 a few years ago. Had good runs here. This is a whole different level of competition he's in right now, and but he's making that second year here, coming off of an overall win with he and Colin Brown and at VIR. I mean, he stepped his game up, that's for sure.
And he's just got to be patient here. He's got to try and find the safe way through. Seems like no one's going to give it to him easy here today amongst these three drivers who have a lot less experience as Indy looks to the inside, not close enough. You just get that sense where you've got the experience level and the amount of seat time that Indy has. If you're not quite close enough, don't get desperate here. Just wait for a better opportunity.
Well, let's see if he tries the move again down into turn 5. This is one of the prime overtaking spots here. Moves to the inside. Kurtz doesn't defend on him quite as fiercely as David Askew did, and Indy is through.
He's just got about 3 or 4 kilometers an hour speed on the 2020 Evo model from Mercedes down the straightaway, so he certainly put that to great effect there.
I think George is doing some big picture thinking as well and going, that's not for class. Yeah, it's overall, but this guy is a top global pro and understanding the scenario here.
I think George just needs to stay with him, because if Indy opens up the door on Fred Poordad, maybe George can take advantage at the same time, maybe down into Canada.
In the overall picture right now, Blackstock has a sizable margin over Poordad. Interesting to see if and when Indy gets through on Poordad, if he can make any inroads. I think he's obviously going to have some help to have a shot at the overall. Let's see what he does here. Boy, Fred right down the center, protecting beautifully.
That's an experienced move there, just placing the race car exactly in the middle of the road where it's really risky for Indy to try and make a move. That's allowed this group to compress once again with all 4 drivers. Indy looks to the inside, not close enough. This is going to give George Kurtz a big run here through 14.
If he had pulled it off, he could have parked everybody, but yeah, I thought Kurtz actually would get a little bit better run than he even did here. But now Indy with that little bit of a speed advantage and a little bit of a toe. I think he's going to pop to the inside of Fred Poordad here. Well, boy, Fred's just impressive.
Big roller speed there by Indy. I think turn 5 is his spot. That's his sweet spot. Just needs to roll off at turn 3 here with good exit speed.
He did.
Porsche is pretty strong in a straightaway. Even in the draft, they seem pretty evenly matched. How defensive will Fred get here on the approach? He's showing him the full half of the race circuit. Indy goes down to the inside. Fred closes the door nicely.
Well, it's the old saying, sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and Fred just went in deep and shut that door.
This is fantastic.
It really is.
I love to see it with someone who you don't expect to be that aggressive and that racy with the amount of experience they have. Got one of the best Mercedes pilots in the world going up against him, and he's not cracking under this pressure at all.
Kurt staying right there. Askew has just dropped off a smidge here.
Tell you what, we know that Max Root is heading over to Le Mans, but if you're looking for a really good bronze-rated driver, which is part of the GTEM makeup, then look for Fred Poordad.
Yeah.
Oh, a little wiggle there. Look at Kurtz. He's looking down to the inside.
Oh, this is where Indy just rolled some huge speed, and he's going to get up on that shoulder of Fred. When is he going to be able to be enough alongside? No. Nice job again by Fred.
Just the pressure and the fact that he's still hitting his marks, Greg. It's so hard to be driving in your rear view mirror or the rear camera, looking at that competitor coming up on you and still hitting your marks and not cracking and making that critical little mistake.
Especially when you're in the middle of the track as opposed to the preferred line. You've got to change, you know, figure out I got to be a little slower in, I got to brake a little, make it all work, and Fred is just executing beautifully.
All of the drivers doing a great job. Great to see George Kurtz and David Askew having a really clean race here today. Not much to choose between them. Did a 2-day test here last month. Certainly has paid dividends and given them the track time and the knowledge and the confidence in the race car.
This is where
Not
Indy
quite
opens.
close enough, is it?
And then he opens up to try and get that run through 3.
And the problem for Indy is the more laps it's taken him, the more confidence Fred is going to have in holding him off. If you just catch someone and pounce immediately, okay, they can't really retaliate. But once they've held you off for 2 or 3 laps in a row like he's done, suddenly it's like, well, he's not strong enough to make that move down to the inside, so I'm just going to roll through the apex.
Well, to Indy's credit, he is showing a lot of respect here as he gets down into turn 5. And the instant he realizes that Fred's got it covered, Indy doesn't try and force the issue, and you have to appreciate that. And for Indy, this is one of those deals you wonder how much the team had to really sit with him and talk to him about, all right, in this series, if you do this, it's blocking. If you move and I mean, it isn't a rule that's adopted everywhere. And sometimes we'll see drivers, one-off drivers that come in that have raced with a little different standard, and they don't get it. Indy really getting some speed out of the carousel. And, oh, that could have been big.
Yeah,
here
watch
comes
Kurtz.
Kurtz.
He's going to pounce as well. Just got Fred Poordad off his stride a little bit through the kink. Big commitment there from Indy. He really widened his approach through the carousel to set that all up. And suddenly has opened up the door for all of these competitors to pounce on Fred Poordad as he now just closes the door in time on David Askew.
Well, then Fred got a great launch out of Canada. Porsche with that engine right over the drive wheels. He got it squared up and went, and I leapt out of that corner. I thought he might go after. Oh, now Askew squeezing down the inside.
That was a nice move.
Yes, it was.
You've really got to be careful there and gentle with your brake pressure up and over those bumps. If you just grenade the brake pedal, you're going to hit those bumps a little bit more harder with the compression on the shock and wash out wide.
And so, big changes there. Indy Dontje now up in the second. Kurt's third, but leading in Pro-Am at Road America. Fred Poordad had done a brilliant job for laps here, but Indy Dontje finally was able to get through on him, and it was just unfortunate way for Fred that he got him in a part of the track. It really disrupted the momentum for Fred, and that allowed the other two Mercedes to come through.
Fred tried, didn't he? He held it right to the very end there, and then it just got so close. They almost touched there as they went through the kink, but that just got Fred off his line and off his rhythm. George had enough of a gap just to roll the speed through the kink and pounce, and almost David went with him as well, although ultimately he made the move into turn 14.
Margin up front here now for Shelby Blackstock with all of that dueling with that with Poordad and Dontje and Kurtz and Askew. He's been able to open up a massive lead here. Dontje now, we'll see. He had the fastest lap of the race. We said that CrowdStrike fast lap at a 2:07.369. We'll see what kind of times he's going to be able to start to put in here relative to Blackstock. I mean, there's so little time left relative to the margin that Shelby has at this point. Certainly Dontje would need a little help, but it's interesting to see what kind of pace he has in a free run now.
Yes, it's more for personal satisfaction, I think, right now in terms of closing that gap. I don't think he's going to catch him unless Shelby should have a problem or make a little mistake. But this is huge for George Kurtz here, getting that Pro-Am lead. You've got Fuentes down in third position, so they came into this race 9 points behind, and right now it'll be a 10-point swing with them running in first, and he needs his teammate to hang with him there in second. That will create the buffer to give George Kurtz and Colin Brown the championship lead back tonight by just a single point.
Just to put a little something into the mix here, Martin Fuentes right now is 7 seconds adrift to Poordad. His last lap was a few seconds quicker than Fred's. He's running 1 to 2 seconds quicker than Askew and Kurtz. And we've got 17 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, he's got the speed to catch them, isn't he?
He does.
It seems like no one's giving up position easy, so
that's true.
The potential to go run down the Pro-Am leaders may get stymied a little bit by the resistance from Fred Poordad aboard the AM category Porsche number 20.
True enough. And you wonder if that Squadra Corsa team might be down chatting with the Wright Motorsports guys going, look, it was fun watching you, holding everybody off here, but now now that they're through, this is a big battle for us in terms of points. Can you do us a goodie here and see what happens here?
It's going to be awfully tight looking at the math of that. So, yes, it really depends totally in terms of how quickly he could dispose of Fred Poordad if and when he catches him.
Yeah, well, he's now trimmed it down to just over 5 seconds from 7 seconds here. So he is certainly coming, and up front, Shelby Blackstock just keeps drawing away. .27-second margin now for Shelby Blackstock, but Indy Dontje now clear. And then number 33, Techman Windward racing entry, is running some very quick laps. Problem for him is it's just a couple of tenths quicker than Shelby, not 2 seconds a lap quicker than Shelby, which is what he would need to have a shot at it here. And for Shelby, he just has to, it's the classic hit your marks perfectly type of scenario. And of course, we had our GT Sports Club race within a race. Just the first 40 minutes of this one, and Ryan, you found the winner.
Victory in the GT Sports Club category overall goes to Mark Issa here today. And Mark, I know this is a big moment for you after a testing crash just a couple months ago, right? To be able to put that behind you, get back to a racetrack as daunting as Road America and come away with a win. How satisfying is that achievement?
Yeah, I think the most satisfying thing is not just getting back up, but being able to get back up and pull out a win. You know, going in for the overall just meant that I was thinking the whole time I wanted to get better and better every lap, every session, and I had a great team behind me, a great car, and that made it possible. So, you know, you get knocked down, but it matters how you get up.
Really great performance from you all weekend long. Congratulations on getting back to victory lane.
Hey, thank you very much. Road America is always great. It's such a challenging track, so fast. SRO puts a great program together, and you know what? Even though we're socially distant, we're really, really connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's the Tech Mech machine, number 33, Indy Dontje. And that last lap now, he ran about a half second quicker than Shelby, but a lot of work to do. But taking a look at some of the great passes that have unfolded here. And first one, we saw Indy on Askew, but a nice move there on Kurtz.
Yeah, George made it a little bit easier than David did, certainly by not defending that inside line, but Indy was definitely a man on the move, and then he really had to heap the pressure on Fred Poordad to try and grab the next position.
Yeah, I mean, Poordad was absolutely relentless in his defense, but so was Inchi in his attack, and he carried so much speed through the carousel, got to the inside and the kink, Cal.
Watch how close this is as Fred tries to turn in, just misses him. That allows George a big head of steam there through the kink and manages to seal the deal by the time they get down to Canada corner. Then David Askew, his teammate, big brave move there on the bumps, just releases the brake pressure enough to not unsettle the car and just skates through.
Just a great sequence of passes, sort of a passing clinic for anybody watching. And how do you do that? Well, there you go.
Those are not easy moves.
No.
They all had to be set up and then really carefully crafted.
And as Dontje now continues to, he just turned a 2:07.7. He is really hooked up right now. That's not far off of his overall fast lap. But right now, George Kurtz continues to lead, but David Askew is not letting George just drive off into the distance here. And Fred Poordad sits now 5th overall. He's dropped off just a little bit, but Fuentes now is closing and is within a couple of seconds of Fred Poordad. So he continues to throw down some of the fastest laps on the track right now in that Hublot Ferrari. Today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with Pirelli, with Rebellion timepieces, and with Total. And you know the Mind Trust on the DXDT pit box has been watching Fuentes as they watch all the competitors and seeing his speed, and have gotten word to both Kurtz and David Askew that Fuentes is driving some really quick laps. You got to dig, you got to find it a little bit, and they've responded after Martin was the only guy running in the class in the 209s. That last lap, Kurtz turned a 209.7, Askew a 209.4 to Fuentes 209.3, so they have responded.
They have, and certainly for David Askew, he would love to dig deep, somehow find his way around his teammate here and score the first victory of the year for the 63 squad. But George has done a really nice job there of hanging on to this lead. And the big question, as you posed earlier, is can Fuentes catch this group? So they need to keep digging and laying down these lap times, because Fuentes is getting awfully close now. There you see him closing in on Fred Poordad. Another lap or so, he's going to be right there.
Well, and then you so rightly pointed out what may or may not, what may break or determine whether Fuentes can get to those guys is how quick he can get by Poordad, if at all. As you know, Fuentes in this push, he is pushing those tires just a little bit.
I think for George Kurtz, having the lead is probably good to have a target, knowing that the team is telling him, listen, Fuentes is coming, you can't relax, George, you got to keep pushing. And that keeps you in your zone a little bit.
That's part of the game, isn't it? Is even though you're out front, sometimes you just have to continue to push, press, but stay within yourself, but find that edge, so to speak. And Martin is on it right now. He's found that edge.
Really impressed with David Askew today. He just laid down a 209.2. That's only 1.5 seconds off the fastest lap of the race for that car, with Ryan Dial on board with a ton more experience. So that's pretty tight delta here on a 4-mile circuit.
Yeah, that truly is. And he's just looking. He's a driver that spent a little bit of time in the World Challenge paddock back in the day, named Joey Hand, who used to say, "Car's comfy." When the car's comfy, that basically translates to confidence.
It does, particularly for the drivers who don't have the massive experience like some of the drivers in this field. So that's being demonstrated right here. And Fred Poordad again dropped away from the two Mercs right now, but you can see he's not going to just make it easy on Martin to make this move. It's not for a class position, but it could certainly stymie the progress of the Ferrari in his chase down of the DXDT machines.
So through the carousel they go, heading toward the kink. Martin Fuentes closing quickly on Fred Poordad as he's trying to run down George Kurtz and David Askew in the two DXDT Mercedes in his Hublot Ferrari. And the key to that might well be how quickly, if he at all, can get by Fred Poordad. And we were wondering, would Fred open the door up, let him slide through and go? And the answer, no. Fred, right there, he protected going into Canada corner heavily, and that's going to really slow down Martin, and Martin's got to figure out where he can go here.
He's got to make it happen in a hurry right now. He's got to put the pressure on. He's got to somehow find a solution here to get by the Porsche.
Let's see what he's able to do here. Now Porsche's got some steam, but now he catches a little bit of a toe and he is coming after him. Martin looks to the inside. Fred isn't going to make it easy here. See if Martin can roll a little bit extra speed. Can roll a little bit extra speed here. Wasn't able to do it there.
Yeah, and this is just costing Martin those precious tenths and seconds in terms of chasing down the two Mercedes. Continuing to hound Fred Poordad as they make the move down the moraine sweep into that heavy, heavy brake zone for turn 5, plunging down the hill. Big compression there. He rolls big speed through apex. Seems like the Ferrari is much better sorted here on this second stint for Martin versus Waj and his teammates seem to struggle with the balance of the car earlier in the run today.
But then Poordad there at the exit of 5, able to get that little bit of a gap built back up again. I thought Martin may have been thinking, well, maybe I can get him down into turn 8, but Fred up in the ante a little bit.
I think the Wright Motorsports team have done a really great job of getting the setup spot on here for Road America. It's a good racetrack for them. They've had a lot of success over the years. They were looking forward to getting here, and it's certainly showing itself in terms of their performance once again.
7 minutes to go. This is not helping Martin at all.
Big run through the kink there. He's got a run going. How brave and how aggressive will he get here? Thinks about it, not close enough. Fred is really strong in these brake zones as well, so it's not like it's going to suddenly give you that signal you can make a move.
To Billy Mitchell, turn 13 into 14 here, and Martin is always incredibly close here, but he just isn't quite there. But this is as close as we have seen him. He is tucked in behind. This might be the opportunity here. Can he make it happen? Fuentes in the draft, going for the pass here into turn 1. And he made the pass, but look at Fred Poordad trying to fight back on the over-under. Martin had to go defensive there.
He did. I just love it. No one really cares what class they're in. They're just having a massive fight out there this afternoon.
That's great stuff. Now we'll see, with Fuentes having cleared him, what kind of margin he's got here. He's about 8.5 seconds back of Askew at this stage. That's a big ask in 5 minutes.
It certainly is. Time is running out for Martin, and also the two Mercedes have responded with their lap times as well. They're running faster laps than Martin right now. Kurtz has done an amazing job, just inching away from his teammate, just marginally. The gap now is up to about 1.5 seconds between the 63 and the 04 car that leads.
On the other hand, I think David Askew is going to be really pleased with the times that he's running here, because they just haven't had a pace close really to the 04 this year, and they do now.
Yeah, I think that's a good signal for these guys moving forward to the final couple of venues at Circuit of the America and at Indy later this summer. So they've got the pace now in the car. It's all about execution. Ryan Dial put the car on the pole, but I think Hinman took a bit of an advantage on him at the start there. He got the big jump that allowed Max Root to pounce as well. And it's hard with these race cars to recover from that poor start.
Kurtz now maybe stretching that margin just a little bit. Blackstock continues to lead. Dontje second, but way behind at this stage. Then this Pro-Am battle, the two teammates, Kurtz and Askew. And Fuentes having made the pass now. We'll see what, if anything, he's able to do, but it's a long ways back at this stage.
The battle here is going to be all about focus between these two drivers, making sure neither one of them makes that vital error. David slightly quicker than his teammate, just by 1/10 of a second there. He needs to get a little bit closer, maybe put a bit more pressure on George here. Try and get in his mirrors, try and shake him up a little bit.
And Shelby just on rails right now, as consistent as can be. Shelby Blackstock, as we are coming up on 3.5 minutes remaining, still has a 20-second plus lead here over Indy Dontje. First and second overall, first and second in silver. And doing a beautiful job in this Acura Accelerated Services Racer's Edge car. But here's the battle for position in Pro-Am. And it's interesting, we see Dave Askew close it up just a little bit on George. Then George seems to respond and finds a little bit more, and that gap just stays about that 1.5 second range. Martin Fuentes did complete the pass on Fred Poordad, and we're keeping track of his lap times right now. And this next lap will be the telltale, but he's over 8 seconds adrift of David Askew right now, and running third in the Pro-Am category.
Yeah, it looked like a promising situation for Fuentes, but I think the pace of both Kurtz and Askew is being compromised a little bit by Fred Poordad. Here's a replay of the move that Martin eventually makes. Just laid on the brakes down to the inside into turn one, but Fred tries to come back at him and the plunge down the hill towards the brake zone for 3.
That Porsche doth accelerate well. And he got Martin into a defensive posture right away, but he's now been able to ease away just a little bit. But Martini was rolling in laps in the 208s, high 208s and low 209s for a while. He may have just used those Pirelli P0s. They're great tires, but when you abuse them with a charge like he had to put on, now he's running 210s, and that's not going to do it when the guys in front are running that or a little quicker.
So Shelby Blackstock, Trent Hinman looking for a sweep on the season. This could be their 8th consecutive victory for the silver class. Have had a few bobbles along the way, notably at VIR. There was a change in the pit stop window, and that communication was missed by the team. And ultimately they came in too early and had to do a drive-through and things like, excuse me, that was at Sonoma. Hasn't been the perfect season, but nonetheless, in terms of sheer pace, this silver-silver combination has been tough to beat.
Yeah, they have just been effective, is the perfect way to put it. Team has given them great cars. They're extracting everything out of it. You can see there Shelby now giving a little bit more respect to the curbs and the kink, as we are coming up on but 1 minute remaining in this 8th round of the GT World Challenge America Championship, powered by AWS. And these guys, it's been their day, no question. And John Meraki, he just runs such a tight, nice, fun, and effective team.
He does, and it's a shame that they don't have their second entry. You talked about the COVID situation and the effect that has had on some of our international drivers. Well, certainly Martin Barkey and Kyle Marcelli, based up in Canada. It's been too tough, particularly for Martin, to deal with the quarantine regulations up there with his family and certainly his business. So they've elected to sit out the remainder of the season, which is unfortunate. But we expected both of those cars to be in the hunt for their individual class wins this year. In fact, the 80 car did have a victory earlier this season.
Here's a look at John as he's following things as his car just flashed over, or underneath the start stand, I should say. Over would be not good. Under the start stand, picked up the white flag last lap here. Indy Dontje has also come through, and that margin just remaining pretty static at this stage between those two. And then this is where we're kind of intrigued. We're going to keep an eye on it here as we watch Shelby floating down into turn number 5. And remember, late in the race yesterday, it's not always over. We had Russell Ward had that big off in turn 3, didn't hit anything, gathered it up and the like. Well, I'll tell you, George Kurtz just turned a lap relative to David Askew. That margin is now up to over 2.5 seconds. And Fuentes down into the 209s, but still over 6 seconds adrift.
Yeah, so I think David must have had a little bobble there on that lap, but that has really taken the pressure off his teammate George Kurtz for that Pro-Am victory. Because David had been running laps in the low 9s at one stage here, and that was a 111 flat. Excuse me, 211 flat.
Last time through the kink.
Treasure that moment till you return. It's certainly a spectacular sector of this race circuit, which one all the drivers enjoy.
Well, I think exhilaration is the way you describe some of the corners around here, and that's just what makes it so incredibly special. And he comes up through the Billy Mitchell turn 13, and into 14. And up the hill he comes. And as you said, continuing an incredibly impressive season, not just in the silver division, but in the overall for Acura and Racer's Edge. Another win here and now at Road America. Overall for Shelby Blackstock, Trent Hinman, and Racer's Edge Motorsports in that Acura Accelerated Services machine. That was a bit of a clinic, wasn't it?
It really was. Dominant display here and a great performance for George Kurtz. They lost the championship lead, and boy, oh boy, did they respond in the right way here today.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant run here. Indy Dontje comes through, finishes 2nd overall, and in silver for Windward Racing in the Tech-Mech Mercedes. And now here comes the CrowdStrike AWS DXDT machine. George Kurtz out of the final turn, climbing the hill, and he and Colin Brown, as you said, Cal, will right the injustice from yesterday, if you will, and bring home a win in Pro-Am. And there you see Colin absolutely elated along with his dad, and then right behind, and I think one of the best runs we've seen from David Askew after Ryan Dial started that car in pole, 2nd in Pro-Am. Martin Fuentes did his best. He and Baptista end up 3rd in Pro-Am in the Hublot Ferrari, and Fred Poordad coming through winning Am here at Road America in that Wright Motorsports Porsche, and he was feisty today. Fun to see.
It was a great battle. It really was sensational stuff.
Take a look here at the provisional routes. Results at this stage, and keep in mind the black on yellow in the bottom, the yellow ones, those are our GT Sports Club competitors, where Marquisa got the overall win, Ryan Gates the overall GT2 win, Frederick the iron win, and Bell another podium in the overall GT2 category. But Racer's Edge, what a drive they put together today over the Windward Racing Mercedes. Then the DXD team sweeping in Pro-Am with Squadra-Corse in the Ferrari, ending up 3rd, completing the podium. And of course, the Wright Motorsports Porsche winning in the AM category as well. And tell you that was an entertaining battle for sure. Once those AMs got in the car and Indy coming up and working through them and watching Fred's defense, it turned that second half of the race in particular into a fun one.
Yeah, there were a handful of laps. There was a great dynamic with Fred Poordad hanging on to that track position, 2nd overall. Indy with a faster car trying to figure out a way through. Big commitment through the carousel and ultimately on the inside for the kink. And that allowed George Kurtz to get a run as well. So they've grabbed their 2nd victory of the year, the 04 squad, and I believe unofficially it should give them a 1-point lead in the Pro-Am Championship tonight.
Well, that just is staying remarkably close, isn't it? We started the weekend with a 1-point margin. We leave with a 1-point margin in Pro-Am. That tells you how close fought this class is.
Certainly some great speed in the 63 car this weekend, so that's gives them promise for the last 4 races of the season. And
I'll tell you, I've been watching this car. It hasn't run every race this season, but a number of them with Russell Ward in particular. He's run with Chris Wilson and the like, who had an outside overall pole at one of the races, so this car certainly got speed. And then adding Indy Dontje into the mix here is an awfully talented global GT pilot with that qualifying run to the overall pole yesterday, and then his charge through the field today. That was just fun to watch.
It was. And just the different configuration Mercedes certainly had its advantages here on the long straightaways. Pretty equal over the lap when you look at the fastest lap times.
That's a really good point. As Indy makes his way down to the windward pit.
Interesting to see that both Colin Brown and Ryan Dial's fastest lap were 0.02 of a second apart from one another.
Oh, look at that.
It's as close as you can get to teammates.
Yeah, well, that's pro precision, isn't it? Both extracting everything out of the car here. And Fuentes, again, third in the Pro-Am class as we watch Shelby getting out of that race-winning Acura from Racer's Edge as everybody now down into the pit lane. Here's the celebrations for an overall race winner, Shelby Blackstock there, and Trent Hinman getting the job done here at Road America, making their way over toward Victory Circle. And Ryan Marine will be waiting for them there, but man, did they put on a clinic today.
They did, and congratulations between the two Winward teammates, Indy Dontje and Russell Ward. Solid weekend. Hopefully we'll see them campaign in a few more races this season.
That would be great to see. Nice to have Indy over here, and what a great addition to the championship he's been, along with his team, and certainly Russell. So great to see that as well. And that Pro-Am category, the battles that we're seeing unfolding in there. Just looking forward. There's George. He's got to be delighted.
Yeah, he's going to be pumped for this one.
And that when they got their first overall win at VIR, he had to hang on under immense pressure. And today he not only hung on, he was able to ease away just a little bit. So he's got to be pleased with that. But speaking of pleased, I'm not going to find anybody more pleased in the place than Shelby Blackstock and Trent Hinman.
Yeah, no question about it. Just about a picture-perfect weekend, and it all began just like in race one, here in race two, with the start. Trent, you were tasked with the start. You were able to grab that lead. How did you do it, and then how did you hold it?
I mean, definitely took advantage of the bottom-end torque that this Acura NSX GT3 has, that's for sure. But the big thing was just watching when the green flag would come out. It was that simple. Just got the jump, you know, saw the starter's hand move a little bit quicker, I think, and was able to roll from there. And the biggest thing for my stint was just making sure I kept the car in one piece for Shelby. I mean, Road America tends to be a relatively rough track on equipment if you decide it to be. So if you start, pounding curbs, doing all that stuff, you can make your day a little bit more complicated than you want. So Shelby did an awesome job in his stint. Obviously, the Racer's Edge Motorsports guys did a great job in pit lane. I think we hit our pit time just perfectly today. And, yeah, looking forward to COTA.
Absolutely, we are as well. Thank you, Trent. Shelby can step on in now. And Shelby, especially after a weekend at Sonoma that wasn't 100% according to plan, to have one that went pretty darn smoothly, at least from the outside. Feel good? Does that give you some momentum for the rest of the year?
Absolutely. I mean, we started this race just the same we did at COTA. I mean, this Acura NSX GT3 Evo was on rails today. We made improvements to the car overnight, and we just really, luckily I was able to manage a pace. Trent had a really good opening stint. The team had a perfect pit stop, so pretty good weekend.
Congratulations. Well
Thank
done.
you.
I think that's a quote that might live here from Trent Hinman. Road American can be pretty hard on equipment if you decide to make it that way.
You can, because if you start to overdrive the circuit a little bit and you do use those exit curbs, they're pretty rough, as he mentioned, and that can create issues with the tires, with the suspension, and even the electronic components within the car.
Yeah, let's get it right back down to Ryan.
Thanks, Greg. How about this? A bounce back for sure for the CrowdStrike duo, George Kurtz and Colin Brown. After the disappointment yesterday, George, how good does it feel to get on the overall podium and the top step in class?
Oh, it feels fantastic. We just, it wasn't our day yesterday. We regrouped. DXDT team and the CrowdStrike team did a fantastic job getting the car ready to go. And, we just executed really well. And we knew we had speed all weekend. So at least we were able to redeem ourselves for Sunday, and a great run by Colin and a great job by the entire team.
really great job here this weekend and today. Congratulations on the bounce back as well. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was just an impressive run by that program. And right back into that points championship. It's a close one. So let's look ahead just a little bit here, Cal. Circuit of the Americas, next round of the championship, have been there already. It was the season opener back in March, so these teams have a bit of familiarity with that track already this year, but it's a few months on, and things have evolved in the championship.
They have, so everyone's gotten that a little bit better. Everyone's sharpened up their pit stops, learned a bit more about their race cars. Some people have got new race cars, so it's a bit of a reset, but it's a great circuit for GT3 cars. It's very demanding in terms of the downforce that's needed to particularly get through those high-speed S's, so it's very well suited to these cars at that circuit.
Yeah, they are fun to watch there, aren't they? So they're fun to watch everywhere, but this one, of course, is mighty special to be sure to be running here at Road America, and looking forward to seeing what's going to unfold. And let's talk a little bit about the fact that we mentioned it briefly, Cal, but when we came into this event here in Pro-Am, it was a 1-point margin in the championship. 2 races later, it's a 1-point margin in the championship.
Yeah, it's been a seesaw battle. It's all about execution. I think there's a lot of teams that have the pace to win on each individual day, but it comes down to execution, not making a mistake, not having contact, being as close as you can be to that minimum pit stop time can really pay dividends as well. So it's just great to see some of these drivers really coming through this season. I think Fred Poordad again put in a tremendous performance today. He's a bronze-rated driver, does not have the experience of some of the guys he's driving around, but continues to put in really solid days.
Yeah, it's fun to watch him run and, to fight like he did. And, for him, I think it's smart. He fights like crazy, but when somebody gets him and everything, then he doesn't try and hang with them and take too much out of the car, understanding that, they're going for that AM championship alone, and that wasn't for a class position. But then the next guy comes up behind him, and he fights for every scrap, doesn't he?
He races really hard, but really clean.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't seem to faze him. He just seems very comfortable being shoved into that environment. Sometimes drivers will just be off their game immediately. They panic, they lose focus, they miss their lines, they miss their turn-in points. Not Fred Poordad. I mean, he just races hard all throughout that scenario.
Yeah, he really does, and it's been just fun to watch him evolve this year as he's helping Max Root evolve a career. Fred is showing that he is also a great competitor, and that says an awful lot about Fred's character in the sense of what he's willing to do to help Max reach the upper echelons of the sport. We said when he talks about Max, it's like a proud papa talking, and that's pretty cool. What a beautiful day here at Road America. Glad you've been able to join us here for this championship run here for the, again, the GT World Challenge America powered by AWS Championship. And look at there at Canada Corner and that run out of the kink. Just so many iconic spots on this track that are so demanding, so exhilarating, so fun. And there's that road you were talking about, that pavement up there that allows people access to get a very different look here at this track. Let's take a look at some highlights from round 8 of the GT World Challenge America powered by AWS Championship. And Shelby Blackstock, Ryan Dial on the pole, but Trent Inman, was able to just time it a little bit better and got the jump.
He got a big jump there, and that allowed Max Root to make the move up to second. He thought about going for the lead as well, but for Ryan Dial immediately on the back foot. Russell Ward, a nice start there in the Winwood Racing, number 33.
Well, as you see, a huge moment there by Colin Brown trying to come down. Then Mark Issa down the inside of Stu Frederick. This was GT Sports Club Racing. They ran for the first 40 minutes for their race. Mark Issa fought his way through the field, started on pole, dropped back to third, came back for the overall win in the GT3 car. Here's a battle that unfolded here. This is what we were talking about. Fred Poordad, Indy Dontje working his way up to the field. He got a huge run coming out of the carousel and then took it into the kink, and that was so cool.
Yeah, high-speed stakes there. Fred tried to close the door, couldn't make it happen, and George Kurtz pounced immediately. He looked like his teammate was going to go with him. Fred closes the door right there at Canada Corner, but a little bit further around the circuit, David Askew gets up on the wheel and makes an amazing move into turn 14.
He certainly did. Dontje driving away. Watch this move by David Askew down into 14. Gets there just releases the brake, slips up the inside. Fred realized, no, it's not going to work. Not for class, backed out of it. Then later, Martin Fuentes had to throw down a beautiful pass to get up and try and run those guys down in Pro-Am, but it was Acura winning overall at Road America.